Welcome back, everybody, to We Are TPM with myself, Kyle Teixeira. Sitting next to me is John Teixeira, as usual. This week, we are going to be discussing requiring liability insurance. That is very vague. So if you want to require liability insurance, talk to us about it. Talk to anything we talk about on this podcast, or just come talk to our smiling faces over the phone. Mm-hmm. Give us a call, 817-818-9039. Shoot us an email at showmethemoney@wearetpm.com, or come see us in downtown Mansfield, Texas. Let's get into it. What are we talking about when we're talking about requiring liability insurance? Are we a bank? Are we what are we doing here? Are we making people have liability insurance for the government with car insurance? What are we talking about?
So we work in an industry, and we live in a society that's really litigious, right? And everybody's looking for somebody to be liable for something. So that's the first reason why we're talking about it.
I don't think everybody is.
Let's be fair. Not everybody, but it is more litigious than we'd like it to be. Mm-hmm. And secondly, things happen, right? Like things do happen. Things happen all the time. Intentional, non-intentional, whatever, it doesn't matter. Things happen. So how do you protect yourself from it? And there's several things that we use to protect our landlords from a lot of their, let's call them fears, or to reduce their risk on things. And one of those is the requirement of liability to landlord insurance. So go ahead and explain what that is, Kyle.
Yeah, at the very baseline, it's one of those things that is exactly what it sounds like for once. It's insurance for your liability to the landlord. It's liability to landlord insurance. This is what that means is things you are liable to the landlord for are covered up to a certain amount. And people may question that because tenants aren't directly liable to the landlord for a lot. But it also doesn't cover all liabilities. For example, you are liable to the landlord for rent. And if you don't pay your rent, this insurance isn't going to cover it, which is an interesting point. So it's not all up front.
Different kind of liability. But
different kind of liability. So,
hey, so let me ask you, because I'm gonna play devil's advocate and ask the question that a lot of people listening to this might be asking themselves. If I'm a tenant and I go down and get renter's insurance from my guy that does my auto insurance, isn't that covering me for what you're talking about?
In general, yes, but knowing the distinction is important. So most, like as a property manager, we require liability to landlord insurance. It's kind of like car insurance, where if you only have liability, we are only requiring the minimum insurance. It doesn't insure you for really anything, right? Most of the time when you go get renter's insurance, you're insuring, as a renter, your belongings and your contents of the home, in addition to liability to landlord insurance. It's all wrapped up into this renter's insurance policy.
Well, it's not always, and that was my point, really, is that people usually go buy contents insurance for their contents. And I don't know how many of those policies include the liability to landlord insurance that we're talking about and how many don't. I really don't have any idea. I do know that there's policies written that are just for the contents of the tenant.
Correct.
So if they think that that's what they're buying when they go buy insurance to insure their stuff, that is not what they're buying, and that is not what you and I are what we choose to require our tenants to provide.
Well, we have this conversation a lot. Like we will because we require it, we will automatically enroll you in liability to landlord insurance on a month-to-month policy that is more expensive than what you're going to find out on the market because it's not for a term. It's not a term policy. Where people get messed up is when something happens, they're like, well, I thought I had renter's insurance through you, even though, the line item every month is liability to landlord insurance. When we actually suggest people go get it from a provider, we just have, because it's required, if you don't go get it from a provider, we auto enroll you.
I got to tell you, because we do exactly that. We ask our tenants to go get it and provide it. whether it's through us or through somebody else. And to your point, we've got one right now where that we had a major plumbing problem in this home, to the point that the family is not able to inhabit the home anymore. This person's insurance through, I believe it was USAA, is so good that they immediately called their insurance. They put them in another home, or they're putting them in an Airbnb while we fix the problem and paying their rent for the month. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's really good insurance for
well,
quote
this is why we say go
insurance.
Get renter's insurance, because renters should have renter's insurance. Yeah. It's not something
stuff happens.
We don't require to have people to have things that cost money that they should have. You know, and I could go on a long list of things that you should have, and I'm not going to require all that. We're protecting the property. That's our job. We suggest you to go get renter's insurance to cover yourself, but we're not going to require that. We're going to require our bare minimum.
So to your point, let's provide a recent real world example of what you're talking about, and this will demonstrate the reason why we require it.
Well, and yeah, so it actually is a rare thing. It's cheaper because it's pretty cheap comparatively, because it's pretty rare that these liability landlord insurance things get used, but when they do, it's not usually a small case, right? Mm-hmm. So I know which one you're talking about. You're talking about fire. Probably the most common one that these policies get used for is when tenant negligence or tenant actions caused a fire, like the stove or you're cooking grease or whatever, and you cause a fire and you burn the kitchen, for example. If you only have this liability landlord insurance, you want to make sure you have liability landlord insurance at a minimum, because that insurance will cover the cost and repairs of that liability that you now have to the landlord to repair the kitchen. What it doesn't cover is, like you said in the other scenario, you to go have somewhere else to live for a certain amount of time and paying your rent and all those things. You're still responsible for in this scenario because, you know, you caused the fire.
It was your negligence and you were the cause of it. So while you're insured, the property is insured from your negligence. You and your circumstances are not.
Yeah, and ideally you have renter's insurance, and you know, we're not going to talk about the different. You can make policies, you can write up policies for whatever, right? But in general, like we said earlier, renter's insurance includes the contents and some additional things and all that. So in this same scenario, if your contents got burned in this fire, say your closet was on the other side of this wall and your clothes all got burned with the fire, well, that's not going to be covered under just liability landlord insurance, because
the insurance that we provide, if you just let it auto enroll, would not cover you there. But like the other insurance that I just demonstrated that our other tenant has, that they went and got themselves through USAA, most likely does cover their contents if there was a fire that burned their stuff. Correct. So there's, like any other insurance, there's different levels of what you can do. And what we provide as a company is the bare minimum. And we tell our tenants and our applicants when they're starting, we're very upfront with them. What we're providing is probably more expensive than what you can get elsewhere. And it probably is not as good as you might want it to be. So you should shop it and go.
Yeah. And you can add on to it with what we offer. So that's the other thing, is we auto enroll you in this bare minimum. Then you can go log into your portal, for example, and add on to it.
I didn't know that.
To make it a good policy.
I didn't even know that.
That's awesome. You can. The insurer that offers this, that backs our bare minimum insurance, will obviously let you, come in and improve it. But the nature of how we have to do business, especially that we prefer you to go get your own, it's a month-to-month policy. And as most people know, anything in this world that is on a non-committed basis, it tends to be more expensive. So like this isn't actual figures. Let's just use $10, for example, for our minimum month-to-month liability policy. It's pretty close. We always suggest going to get it somewhere else, because you can probably get a fully fledged renter's insurance policy for anywhere from $10 to $15 a month cost for year terms. This is an estimate. Don't quote me on this, but that is the price comparison. It's a pretty tight knit policy cost. Like, you're not going to go spend $100 a month on a renter's insurance policy. That's just ridiculous. You're talking about a cup of coffee cost, if you want to talk how advertisers do, for the cost of a cup of coffee in the event of a fire.
That would be a really good policy. For the cost of a cup of coffee would be an extremely good policy. I mean, it's not even that much, right?
Between what our minimum and
right.
more covered is probably the cost of a cup of coffee.
Right.
So,
every day for 30 days.
No, a month.
No,
cup of coffee a month.
Oh, okay. Well,
so
yeah, that would be a slam dunk then, wouldn't it?
So there's really, and the liability landlord thing, in most cases doesn't cover as much as you'd think, but it's three main causes. It's fire, flood, and why can't I think of the other one?
I don't know.
Well, in liability landlord, it's just general damages, really. So, and then by flooding, I don't just mean natural flooding. I mean, you caused a flood, like you left your bathtub running and flooded the whole house, or you left your sink running, and, most things that are due to negligence on the tenant's part.
They didn't cover during Snowmageddon. They didn't cover any of our claims. So it wasn't an act of God, right? But things that happen to the home that cause damage.
Well, it doesn't mean your homeowner's insurance won't cover these things.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually to come before that because, you're paying a deductible in a
tornado or earthquake. Steve asks.
Tornado or earthquake? No, those are the homeowner's insurance. This has nothing to do with the tenant. But yeah, and I will say it's like all other insurances. You can get coverages. Some will cover and not cover different things. Just talking about the general baseline policy is
our recent experience is probably the most common and probably the best example of a use where a tenant was cooking, started a grease fire, and the entire kitchen basically burned down. Not the entire kitchen, but the entire kitchen needed to be restored because part of the kitchen burned down, right? And that created a scenario where we now had to paint most of the house, and they had to leave the home, and it took a couple weeks to do the renovation and new appliances and new cabinets and new counters, and everything had to be new. And so that was an expensive oops, right? Like put grease on a pan, walk away and go to the bathroom and come back and find your kitchen on fire. That's a big mistake, and that is not, as a landlord, as an owner of a home, and I got people living. This is one of our owners' fears, for especially owners that are less experienced. They worry about things like that happening, right? So, I have people I don't even know if they know how to live life, and they're living in my house, right? What are they going to do to my house? Are they going to do something like what I just described? This alleviates that concern. This particular homeowner was not out of pocket any money whatsoever. The insurance company covered the entire cost. They did not pick up the cost for the additional expenses for the tenant. The tenant had to go live somewhere else at their own expense.
In addition to still paying rent for the property.
In addition to still paying rent and utilities for the property. So the homeowner was not out any money. And the problem has been rectified, and everyone's back, and tenants are back in, and everybody's happy. This is common. I mean, I walked in. We had a fire. We lost a stove the other day, and it was, fortunately, this one was extremely small. This was just a stove. There was absolutely no damage except to the stove. And I bet people do this all the time, Kyle. They stored their Tupperware in the oven. Right? They used the oven as a place to store and forgot it was in there and started the oven. That went badly.
I don't have a lot of comments on that I want to put on this podcast.
I'm just saying that people do things like that. And that sounds ridiculous to you life. And I, but to other people, that doesn't sound so ridiculous. Other people are probably listening and going, yeah, I've done that before. Or I do that all the time. Or I don't know, until something like this happens to you in your life, sometimes people just don't stop and think about the potential consequences for doing something like sticking plastic in an oven.
Well, and I've seen, this was a long time ago, but styrofoam, right? Styrofoam in a microwave will catch on fire, but it won't catch on fire immediately. It'll take 10 to 30 seconds to...
I've never heard this. Styrofoam. catches fire.
Well, the first time I found this out was when I was a kid in your house.
As this is common knowledge.
First time I found this out was as a kid in your house and in your microwave. Luckily, I caught that one soon enough. But I have seen someone walk away from a microwave and it caused the microwave to catch on fire. That happened a couple years ago to a tenant. But yeah, like what was the scenario at your house? It wasn't me, it was a friend, but it was the styrofoam ramen, the ramen cups that are in styrofoam. And he didn't put water in it.
That's what it was. He had no water thing, kind of, yep.
Well, yeah, but in general, styrofoam it will pop and catch on fire, so... but metal too. Some people don't know you can't put tinfoil in a microwave until they find out the hard way.
Or some people don't know. I've done this. Everyone's done this. There is aluminum lining in some of these to-go containers that you don't realize is there sometimes.
Yep.
It's meant to hold in moisture and hold in heat, and then you go stick it in the microwave and But microwaves nowadays are made to sense that. And they kind of shut off the microns or something. They don't blow up like they used to, but they just kind of don't work. But yeah, there are so many things like this that can be happening. How about first time you've ever rented a home, okay, or maybe it's the first time you've ever had your own laundry. And you do a lot of laundry and you've lived in this home for 4 or 5 years and you've never once thought to or knew that you needed to clean out the dryer duct. And it was just jamming up full of lint, and you know what happens there sometimes. Eventually it backs up to the point where either A, your dryer doesn't work, or I've seen it catch fire.
Yeah.
That's a common one. And while it's common sense to you and I, because this is what we do for a living, it's not common sense to everybody. If you stick a 20-year-old that's never lived on their own into a home for their first time, do you expect them to know everything about maintaining a home?
Well, and it's that, like the drain line of the washer machine's the same way. That happens all the time. And you hope it's leveled in a certain way that when it starts overflowing, it overflows into the ground and you see it, right? But it's not always the case. Sometimes it just goes back into the wall and you don't see it till it's coming out the other side. So, yeah, a lot of these things are what liability landlord insurance can help give some peace of mind to the landlord and protection as well. So, and we're not even quoting that every single thing we just talked about will be covered under this, but it's just, it can be for one, and for two, these are the things that not everybody knows the same thing. Like grease down the drains. Oh my gosh. If you are listening to this and you don't know that grease and oil products do not go into our sewer system because they clog drains, because they harden up and become an obstacle in the drain that over time will literally clog it.
Oh, here's another one.
It's not as common as
paint.
People think. Oh, especially oil-based paint. But
people pour paint in vacant homes down toilets, down showers and tub drains, thinking that it's just going down a drain and it's going away forever. Well, guess what it does? It sits in that drain and it hardens. And nobody's using the home because it's vacant. Mm-hmm. So it's sitting there for 2, 3, 4 weeks, hardening. And by the time somebody goes to use the home, gosh, this frustrates me.
And maybe, and it's not just people. You're talking about contractors.
Contractors do
because they do. And sometimes with water-based paint, right? If you water it, if it got watered down and enough water went through those drains,
you could wash away water-based paint pretty easily.
It could, right? But usually they're not letting that drain run for an hour.
They don't turn the faucet on and let it run for long
enough time, right? But then there's oil-based paint, and oil-based paint it won't mix with the water. Has an oil or oil-based, because what happens is oil-based products harden too, but they're not going to get broken up by more water. They're going to do the opposite. They're going to repel the water. Grease is just going to become a big block. I mean, have you ever seen Texas clay? That's what grease ends up looking like in your drain pipes.
I've had my contractor bring the snake back out and say, tell me, and I knew what happened. Tell me, I can't tell what's in here. There's something in here. It looks like plastic is coming up. I'm like, that's not plastic. That's hardened paint.
Yeah.
Not plastic. hardened paint.
Gosh, I mean, spends more time in drains. I mean, like non-flushable wipes shouldn't be flushed.
Hey, we've gone sideways, but what we're doing is demonstrating a whole bunch of things that people do incorrectly, maintaining home or in and around a home that could cause problems. It could cause you to need this landlord or this liability insurance, right? Because somebody's going to be liable for a wrongdoing, and it shouldn't be a homeowner that didn't do it.
Yeah,
right?
This is very true. So requiring liability landlord insurance, I think, is important for even landlords to do. Some people don't have property. It's more common that you'll have a property manager, they will require it. You may never even know it until it's needed, right? But if you're just a landlord renting to one person, you can still require it. And even at that rate, require insurance, renter's insurance, right? Because we go out of our way to tell everybody we require this minimum, but you should go get it, right? If you go buy a $50,000 car, Texas is only requiring you to get liability insurance in case you hit somebody. But if you hit somebody and it's your fault, you also owe the bank $50,000 for that car. So you should probably get full coverage to cover you in the event of that occurrence. So, minimums exist for the reasons to protect whoever requiring them. Make sure to protect yourself too. So,
love it.
That is requiring liability insurance.
I think we killed that one.
Recommending
we recommend
insurance?
it if you are renting a home, if you're a landlord, if you're a property manager and you're not doing this, you should be doing it. You absolutely should be doing it. It will help you. It will help your clients. We do it and have been doing it for quite some time. And so if you're going to rent from us, you're going to pay for liability landlord insurance in some forms. Whether you buy it through us or you go buy it yourself, we don't really care.
And we didn't even bring up the most common occurrence is actually that people try to use this for, and liability landlord insurance does not cover, but renter's insurance does in most cases, is burglary. Burglary is, especially when people are like, look, someone broke into my home, all this stuff got stolen, I wanted to file a claim, and we're like, this doesn't cover that. Your renter's insurance will cover that in most cases. Other than it might cover fixing the front door, maybe, but that's the only liability to the landlord in that case. Okay,
so bottom lining it for the tenants out there listening, right? Like, so if you're a homeowner, you should be requiring this 100%, at least the minimum to protect your property. If you're a tenant, if you are like one of our applicants and you're signing a lease with us, here's my recommendation. We're going to provide a minimum base. And my recommendation is go to whoever you get auto insurance from and say, I'm about to rent this home at 123 Main Street, and I need this limited amount of renter's insurance. What can you provide to me? And get a quote with some good coverage that will save you money and get you way better coverage and put you in a way better position. If you're going to pay somebody money, you might as well get better coverage rather than paying us just for the minimum. The only reason
people so often I've seen them say, well, I got a quote from my insurance company and it was $125 for the year, right? Not considering that was
by 12.
No, that was for full coverage in my example. That was for renter's insurance. You are paying us about the same.
Yeah,
for
that's
liability.
Less than what you're going to pay us. Yeah. If you divide that by 12.
Yeah, and ours is a pass-through cost. It's not like we're charging any more than they charge, but it is what it is. So go get yourself something good. Know what you're getting, because generally.
So if you're a tenant, go get some good one. Go get good insurance that's appropriate for what you need. And if you're an owner, make sure you're requiring it. Don't put somebody in your home without requiring it.
But for all the reasons we just said, like we do recommend, they go do the same thing.
Yep.
So, all right.
Absolutely.
There it is. Requiring liability insurance from We Are TPM. So you guys have any questions? Want to talk about it? We want to talk about insurance providers that we could recommend. And that's about all we're going to do because We are not insurance brokers. Give us a call, 817-818-9039. Shoot us an email at showmethemoney@weartpm.com. Go to weartpm.com to get back to this podcast and start an endless loop, or go look at our properties. But that is about it for this week. We are out.
Late.